Okay, welcome back. We're now going to take what we've learned about making buttons, and we're now going to use those buttons to control content. Because I didn't want to cover how to build content, because you can do it in so many different ways, I've gone ahead and created some dummy content for us to work with. I'll go ahead and show you how I've set it up, but I just don't want to get bogged down in making this a 2 hour tutorial when we just can go through and do some quick coding. So just real quick, we still got our navigation. I've renamed the buttons to fit the dummy content that I've created. I've adjusted the size a little bit on the menu and shifted it to the bottom. Then I have made 4 pages of content to go with my buttons. We can dive into here and see what we've got going on. Basically, I just went and cropped a bunch of images of bees off a Google image search. And then I've done a little bit of massaging of the rounded corners and kind of laying it out, some comps, and then using a mat to trim the edges and to give us kind of a final background to then overlay our content onto. Then I've got down here the title. I've made a white and a black to overlay to give me a slight offset to make it pop over top the image. And then I've routed that into a container we call header. And then I've made another text box block of text here I'm calling copy block. That is just ipsum lorem. It's actually Star Wars ipsum lorem. I don't know what your favorite is, but I tend to use Star Wars ipsum lorem to fill until I get actual content. So combining the body copy, the header, over top of the background, we end up with our content page like so. And we're going to come back and kind of play with how this can be loaded in. Like, why wouldn't you just turn this into one big flat image? That's an option, but it limits you in what you can do as far as stylistically to make it look pretty, as far as how it all comes together, animation to tween the header to come in and the graphics and stuff. So we're going to play with that. We're going to kind of do a simple version first, and then we're going to build up on the basics. So same deal. I've done it for all 4 pages, just with a different image and a different title, dummied copy. And then I've also created a full-size background image and added a switch so I can switch between a version that is crisp and clear and a blurry version with a ramp over top of it, and that'll end up being our background. And this is going to create our start screen, because when you have an exhibit, usually you have some form of attractor or start screen to kick off the interaction. So I'm going to go ahead and bring over what it currently looks like. So this is currently the background without the blur and just a start button. We haven't added any interaction yet, so we're going to do that starting now. So I'm going to move this out of the way. To get this set up, what I want to do is I want to back all the way out to our project 1. And what I usually like to do, because we're going to get, this isn't scary, but we're going to use an extension. Don't be afraid of Python. It is great, and you will build it up over time. Whenever you look at a big, 100 lines plus of code, it might seem overwhelming if you're not used to it, but it all starts one line at a time, couple of functions at a time, and you build it up, and with good commenting and stuff, it all makes sense. So the first thing I do is I take our main project container, I go over to the common tab, and I give us a global shortcut called app. And that's just so it's easy to reference without having to type out the full path to it. Then I want to go to customize component. I want to go to extension code, and I want to create our class here, our extension, that we're going to put our functions into. And it's really good to put all your main code in one place as best you can. That makes sense versus having lots of little code all over the place, because then it gets harder to manage than just having it in a central location. So we might call this the core or the main or whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to call it main. And then you can add it. And if you hold down and add, you can do either a standard or an empty. Standard includes some extra stuff for storage between saves, between running the app when it powers down and comes back. In this case, I'm just going to go with a blank empty, just keep it simple. And that's the extension. Boom, we have an extension. So what does that do? We go back inside now, and we have a new container called main. And this has our template of our extension in it. So now we can right click and click edit content. That will bring up our editor. For me, it's Sublime. Highly recommend it. Very cheap, easy to read and formats and everything. So we're now going to create some functions that we're going to use, that we're going to call from our buttons. So when I set up a project, a lot of times I'll have a couple of different functions in it. So one of the first things I'll want to have is one called reset. And the reset function is going to reset. Obviously, if someone walks away from the exhibit or we need to start it over from the beginning, the reset is going to set all the variables back to where they need to be to start with. If you don't have everything ready to write your function, you just type in pass or return. That way it doesn't error out on you. So I'm just going to kind of block these out real quick. Then we're going to have one for start experience. And this function is going to be that start button on the main screen. That's going to set things in motion. And then we're going to have a function called go to page. And the self, just put it in there. You can read up on why that you do that. But then any other variables you can put after that. So in this case, we're going to want to know what the page is, the page number that we're going to be passing. So those are my three functions. So we now, for testing, let's make a print statement in here. Print go to page, and then we'll make a little comma, and page will be put out here for us so that it tells us what's going on when we click our buttons. So the next thing I want to do is I want to edit back out here. We've got our four buttons. I want to go to the first button here and click edit again, Control E on PC. And instead of doing this print statement from our first tutorial, I'm now going to try to talk to that function. So I put in OP and then app, which is our shortcut to our main container. And now since that app has an extension inside of it, I can just go ahead and call the function. So go to page, and then I can pass it a number. So we're going to go to page 1. So I'm going to copy and paste that and do that to all four of them. So let's go here, edit. This is number 2. Save. And then here, Control E, copy paste from the other one. Now we're page 3. And then I'm going to go ahead and close these. We don't need them open because that's the only piece of code we need to have on those buttons. And then we have number 4. We're going to do another paste, go to, now we're doing page 4. And that's all we need on those. So we've already set up those buttons to do their thing. We also are going to need to, on our start button, we're going to need to add our call to that start experience. So we're going to go op.app.startExperience. And we don't need to pass it anything. We just close the bracket. And that's all we need on that button. So, and if we want to, we can do a print start experience. And what I'll do is I'll bring up the console so that we can see what's happening, or if we have any errors or anything like that. And then I'll bring over the mock-up here, the preview. Scale this so we can see it okay. So when I click on Start now, we should see Start Experience. Fantastic. Then we need to see the menu. Now, currently we can't see the menu because I have the display flag turned off. So for temporarily, I'm going to turn that display back on, and I'm going to press Evolution, Society, page 2, button 3, button 4. So we're getting the information from those buttons now fed into that function. So I then have something, it tells me what I can do with it. So the next thing we want to do, I'll move this out of the way for the moment. And we can go back to working on our code. So we want to, when someone presses that, obviously we want it to say something more than start or go to a page. So let's do the start first. So when we start the experience, the only thing we have is the start button enabled and the background. So what I want to do is I want to turn off the start button. I want to switch the background, switch 1. I want to switch that from currently 0 to 1, so it goes to a blurry background. Then I want to turn on my menu, and then I want to turn on page 1, because by default we're going to have button 1 already active, and we're going to have page 1 already open. So we need to make that happen. So in our start, what we need to do is we need to target OP, and then we've got our, let's see, whoops. We've got start button. So OP start button dot par dot display equals 0. Or you can do 0, you can do false, but 0 is fine. So that's going to turn it off. And we need to do the opposite to the menu. So we go over to menu and we turn it on. We also need to turn on page 1. So page underscore 1 dot par dot display equals 1. So if we now save that and we go back out and we double check, we reset things here. So I turn off my menu and we bring this back over. So now when I click start, I should see the menu, this go away, the menu come back. I didn't do the background, but I'll go back to that. So click on it, boom, the button's gone, the menu's here. We got an error. We didn't get the page 1 did not pop up. So we've got to go back and look what we did wrong there. So moving this out of the way, probably capital is what happened there. So instead of underscore page with a lowercase, it's page with an uppercase. So that is now correct. And like I said, I forgot to do the switch for switch 1 from 0 to 1. So I go back in my little function here and we add that into the list of things to do. OP, I apologize for my bad typing. Dot par dot index equals 1. So now that will switch over to the blurry version, etc. So now to go back, now this is why we have the reset, because obviously this is a pain to manually go back and reset everything. So why don't we just go and build out our reset real quick right now. So what we know needs to happen is, I've just copied and pasted from the start. We know that start button needs to come back on, that switch needs to go back to 0, that menu needs to go back to 0, page 1 go to 0, and we have those 3 other pages, so I'm just going to manually drop them in here and set those all to 0 as well. So page 1 through 4 are all set to 0. So when we reset, we now get everything back to the state that we want it. We could also take care of making sure that the buttons are in the correct state as well, because we have that active option on the button. So we can go to button 1, sorry, button 1, and we have that active. So we can go here and say op button1 dot par dot active, which is our custom variable, equals 1. And the other ones are going to equal 0. So I'm just going to duplicate 3 of those and change their numbers to match 2, 3, 4. So we now have a reset function. And what you can do with that is temporarily, until we get more code into the thing, we can bring up our console and we can type in op.app.reset. And boy, I can't remember if I had a capital or not. I did. Usually it's best practice, I think, to have a capital if it's a public variable versus a lowercase if it's a private variable used within, or function, I'm sorry. So anyway, that reset gets us to where we want to be. And now when I hit start, it's going to hit that start experience function, and that's going to bring up what we wanted. So it switched to the blurry background. It now has the page 1 content. It's got the first button marked as active. Fantastic. So now we need to set up our go to page function. So every time you go to a new page, we need to make sure we reset the old page. Is ideal that we keep track of whatever the old page was. And a good way to do that is just make a variable up here in the init self, and we can call it current page, and set it to whatever. I can set -1 or 0, whatever you want to do. On start experience, we know that we're setting that current page is going to equal 1. Automatically, we start on 1. And then whenever we are in the go to page, at the very end of the function, we'll reset the current page to whatever you're passing into it. So until we get down to that section, we haven't reset it yet, which is good, because up here we can use the currently active page to turn it off if we need to. So, but just to make things easy right now, I'm going to copy and just blanket turn them all off, because I know I'm going to bring up another page. So I've turned all of them off. And then I can also turn off all the buttons. This is kind of just a quick reset. And now we can turn on the actual selected button. So we can go to op underscore, and we can type in the first part of button underscore, and then dynamically we add a plus. We take the page number. Now, because the page is coming in as an integer, whenever you try to glue two strings together in an OP like this needs to be wrapped in a string, or else it'll give you an error. So now it's going to form OP plus the number, so that'll target the correct button, .par.active equals 1. And then we also need to do the same thing for the page. So we go to capital page, sorry for the inconsistency, and we go underscore, same thing, plus string, and then we also pass it the page. Then we say par dot display equals 1. So because we turned everything else off and then only turned back on the one that we've requested, this essentially, it'll look seamless. This is what later on we might do some things where we check for the old page. That's why I went ahead and put the current page variable in here, because when we come back and do a little more advanced version of this, we're going to want to know what is currently on so we can animate it off. We don't want to animate everything off because everything isn't necessarily on. So it helps to give us that extra little information so that we can manage the on and off state of different pages. But for now, we have our reset, our start, and our go to page. This is now a fully functioning app. It'll let you get to the content, assuming I haven't made any errors. So now we can reset and we can test our app. I press start. I can go to any of the pages, and we have a now fully functioning app. And that really is the minimal code that you need in order to make this app work. You would also want to go and add a timeout, which I'll do another video on. Kind of an abandon when a user walks away. You have basically a timer that keeps resetting itself, and then after a period of time, 3 to 5 minutes, it'll automatically call that reset button. But I think this is a good place to stop now, and then in the next video we will come back and we will bring in the tweener class and show you how to add more animation to this versus just the on-off look. We'll have a lot more detail so that the pages themselves don't just come in all at once. The header can come on, then the title, then the body copy. So it'll be a lot nicer putting that extra work into it. So that's what we'll do next video.